Hello, my name is Fletcher Coleman, visiting professor in the Department of Art History and Design in the Leo Institute for Asia and Asian Studies at the University of Notre Dame. I was also the guest curator for the visiting exhibition Chao Shao-an, Moments Between Worlds, and it's my pleasure to bring you this introductory lecture. On April 9th, 1997, on the occasion of Chao Shao-an's 92nd birthday, Mayor Willie Brown and the City Council of San Francisco designated the day to be Professor Chao Shao-an Day. In their proclamation, they recognized Chao Shao-an's profound impact on the course of 20th century painting and his role in developing Chinese ink painting traditions through deftly incorporating international materials, techniques, and subject matter within a core foundation of Chinese painting practices. That day, the city of San Francisco also celebrated the establishment of a Chao Shao-an painting gallery at the Asian Art Museum, which had been endowed 2 years prior in 1995 through the generous donation of 80 major works by the artist. Through the founding of this gallery and the subsequent recognition of Chao Shao-an across the United States by institutions such as the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, the artist's unique connection to the international community was cemented prior to his passing in 1998. As we now fast approach the 25th anniversary of this commemoration of Chao Shao-an's legacy in the United States, it has been my true pleasure to work with the artist's son, Zhao Zhitai, grandson, K.Y. Zhao, and his family to once again celebrate the life, work, and enduring impact of Chao Shao-an. We're delighted to be able to say that the artist's global legacy continues through a close connection to Notre Dame, with K.Y. Zhao having graduated in the class of 1989, and K.Y.'s son, Travis, now a current sophomore. And, in a delightful twist of fate, Chao Shao-an's artistic precision with materials and techniques gave birth to 3 generations of engineers within the family, 2 of which have been proudly trained by the University of Notre Dame. By the time of his passing in 1998, Chao Shao-an had lived a truly momentous life over the course of a nearly 80-year career as a professional artist. He experienced the fall of China's last imperial dynasty, saw the birth of Republican-era China, survived 2 world wars and the Chinese Civil War, observed the founding of the People's Republic of China, was made an honorary member of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II, and witnessed the reversion of Hong Kong from British rule to Chinese sovereignty on July 1st, 1997. All the while, Chao Shao-an traveled around the globe to show his work, lecture, demonstrate, and train students in more than a dozen countries. Whereas many of his contemporaries perished in conflict or were overwhelmed by the political circumstances of the 20th century, Chao Shao-an endured, thrived, and developed an artistic philosophy that was deeply rooted in Chinese tradition, but incorporated techniques and subject matter that synthesized the ever-changing historical landscape he experienced over 9 decades. Our exhibition celebrates the dramatic international nature of Chao Shao-an's life and practice as it found expression in the artwork of the final decades of his life. The 17 works selected highlight the manner in which Chao Shao-an came to reflect his attitudes towards life and artistic practice through intimate depictions of the natural world. These works crystallize small-scale, transitory moments within our environment, like a caterpillar preparing to spin its cocoon or spring buds blooming on a snow-covered branch. As we will see, Chao Shao-an's mature technique, brushwork, and coloration reflected in these pieces also captures the many worlds that the artist traveled through over the course of a long career. And so, I would like to utilize this time to have us move between some of these moments and some of these worlds as they found expression through the brush and ink of the artist over the course of his lifetime and during this period specifically. Born in Panyu County in the southern Chinese province of Guangdong in 1905, Chao Shao-an came of age in the early years following the collapse of the Qing dynasty, which had ruled since 1644. Harried from beyond its borders by imperialist powers and from within its borders by revolution, the final decades of the Qing dynasty were characterized by unrest and increasingly urgent efforts to reform and modernize the Chinese ruling elite. Chao Shao-an's early education reflected the dramatic social changes sweeping across China during this period. Although modern reform schools had been established in 1902, Chao Shao-an was still sent to study the classical Confucian tradition at a private school in 1912. However, his father passed away shortly thereafter, and due to financial hardship, Chao received less than 4 years of formal education. Fortunately, he became interested in studying art and began teaching himself ink painting and watercolor techniques from woodblock printed painting manuals. In 1920, at the age of 15, Chao Shao-an had what would turn out to be the most impactful encounter of his artistic life when he applied to and was accepted by the private studio school of the ink painter Gao Qifeng. Qifeng, along with his brother Gao Jianfu and their close friend Chen Shuren, had been actively involved in the revolutions that toppled the Qing dynasty. Having received their first training in the local southern Chinese ink painting tradition, they established their own aesthetic movement to transform and modernize classical Chinese ink painting. The artists came to utilize a set of techniques and artistic ideals that would later be given the name the Lingnan School, literally the south of the ranges school, referring to the geographic area of Guangdong and Guangxi in southern China. Early art critics characterized the work of the Lingnan School as a blend of traditional Chinese ink painting brushwork that incorporated quote-unquote Western subject matter and techniques, including the perspectival treatment of space and the use of volumetric highlighting. Yet the ideals of the Lingnan School and the origins of their artistic methods reached much deeper than this simple dichotomy of East and West. As Gao Qifeng himself wrote about their style, quote, "I started by learning purely from ancient Chinese paintings and worked painstakingly to imitate the works of the great masters. Later, I found out that despite their merits, the paintings looked vague. The more I studied, the more I realized that studying is like sailing against the current. If you don't move ahead, you find yourself pushed backward. If we don't assimilate everything that is good, we'll lack the strength to develop. Therefore, I began to learn to paint from life as the Western painters did, and I also studied their theories on geometry, the use of light and shadow, perspective, and close-ups. Meanwhile, I tried to preserve everything that is artistically good in traditional painting: the brushwork, the emotions expressed, the poetic meaning." As Gao Qifeng powerfully articulated, there was a sense at the turn of the 20th century that Chinese ink painting had stagnated through an over-reliance on models from the past. When he referred to the vague outcomes of imitating the works of great masters, he was referencing the prevailing tradition of xieyi, or sketching ideas. This tradition taught students that one could harness the spirit of great artists of the past through close study of the general character of their art and brushwork. An artist working in this tradition did not necessarily seek to produce works that looked visually similar to the masters who came before, but instead channeled the most important innate inner qualities. This mode had dominated much of the late Qing artistic output and was popular with the elite class of scholar artists who had controlled artistic discourse in China. Viewing the sketching ideas tradition at the turn of the 20th century as overburdened by a heavy past, the founders of the Lingnan School looked to alternative traditions within the history of Chinese ink painting, as well as to techniques from abroad. As young reformers, the brothers Gao and Chen Shuren had the opportunity to travel abroad to study art in Japan. There, they encountered European Academy painting as filtered through their Japanese contemporaries, who likewise sought to revolutionize Japanese artistic traditions during the industrialization and reformation of Japan in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Gao Qifeng and Gao Jianfu closely studied the work of artists such as Takeuchi Seiho, who incorporated 19th century European realist techniques with Japanese painting materials and subject matter as a means of reinvigorating native Japanese practice and combating the widespread popularity of European art in Japan. Studying these approaches to artistic modernization and the structure of art societies in Japan, Gao Jianfu, Gao Qifeng, and Chen Shuren returned to China and promoted their own vision of a reinvigorated Chinese tradition grounded in realism and the idea of painting from nature. Here, we see a painting of a horse, a traditional ink painting subject used as a metaphor for individual character that was created by Gao Qifeng. He utilized European-style foreshortening to show the horse receding into the middle distance of the painting, while also deftly using the spread of water and ink to shade the body of the horse, giving it a sense of weight and volume. Likewise, in their efforts to integrate the Lingnan School with national discourse, the founders also applied their blend of ink painting skill and realistic techniques to new politically charged subject matter, such as technological innovation, national defense, and the deprivations of war. Yet, at a time when the international art world turned towards abstraction and surrealism as cutting-edge forms of modern expression, why did the Lingnan School artists feel that realism was the best approach to reform Chinese ink painting? In fact, the ideas of representation and realism in Chinese art also had a long history parallel to those of the dominant sketching ideas tradition. Since the medieval period, 写生, or sketching life, had also existed as an artistic ideal that incorporated the study of the natural world and later came to directly signify painting from nature. For many centuries, this approach was viewed as a lesser mode of practice, primarily utilized by commercial or professionalized artists. However, the Lingnan School founders had encountered it through their early training with important 19th century local masters in the Southern Chinese tradition, such as Zhu Lian, who used the sketching life tradition to effectively portray traditional subject matter in an intimate and unusual way, such as the silkworm seen here happily munching on mulberry in this fan painting. While critics derided Zhu Lian as a painter of insignificant subjects in the sketching life approach, the Lingnan School found the perfect indigenous Chinese painting tradition to harmonize the realist techniques and methods for painting from nature that they had explored in Japan. Moreover, they viewed the commercial and professional origins of sketching life as appropriate for their aim of expanding Chinese ink painting to a broader audience and making it a part of the new national reform discourse. Building upon this synthesis of techniques, they established their own training studios, were actively involved in publishing reform magazines focused on art and political discourse, and widened public access to art through displaying and selling work in non-traditional venues such as bookstores.